My name is Elaine Harwood. I am 63 years old. I had spent the afternoon pressing the blue dress my late husband always liked, the one with soft sleeves and a quiet shine. My son, Matthew, had invited me to dinner in Charleston, a little family gathering. He said, after months of silence, I thought maybe it was peace at last. When I stepped into the restaurant, the air was heavy with perfume and grilled meat. The table was already full. Matthew sat beside his wife, Lauren, her parents across from them, laughter rippling like wine. My grandson, Oliver, was coloring on the menu. No one noticed me for a moment. Lauren finally looked up. "Oh, Elaine, there you are," she said, smiling too wide. She gestured to an empty chair at the end. There was no place sitting. Only a breadbasket, half empty. Crumbs scattered like someone had already decided what I deserved. I sat down quietly. Matthew gave me a short nod. The kind you give a stranger you recognize but do not want to talk to. The waiter arrived, pen poised. Before I could speak, Lauren slid the basket toward me. "We didn't order for you," she said gently. As if it were a kindness, Matthew didn't even look up. "You should have eaten before coming," he added. Their parents laughed politely. Oliver froze, his small hand tightening around a crayon. I reached for a piece of bread, broke it in half, and placed one piece on his plate. His eyes met mine, confused, ashamed. I smiled, noted. I said, it was not the kind of smile people expect from someone embarrassed. It was the kind that says a clock has started ticking. Conversation drifted back to vacation plans and wine lists. The sound blurred. I heard only the scrape of forks against china and the soft beat of my own pulse. I had built this boy's world his home, his business, and somehow ended up the guest who didn't belong. When the waiter returned to confirm their orders, I stood. My chair made a clean, sharp sound against the floor. "Cancel any pending orders," I said evenly, "and put what's already been served on my son's account. After all, he's celebrating his choices, not mine." The table fell silent. That was the moment everything began to shift. After I left the restaurant, I drove home without turning on the radio. The road was dark, and every stoplight seemed to hold me longer than usual. I didn't cry. I just let the quiet stretch. When Matthew was 10, we used to drive these same streets after his baseball games. His father, Paul, would sit beside me, humming along to old songs while Matthew slept in the back seat. After Paul's accident, it was just me, just bills, grief, and a boy who asked too many questions about heaven, expecting answers I sometimes didn't have. I learned to smile through exhaustion because someone had to show him the world didn't end with one funeral. Years later, when Matthew said he wanted to open a restaurant, I didn't hesitate. I took a second mortgage on the house, cashed the small insurance policy Paul left, and handed my son a check for $200,000. He promised, "One day, Mom, you'll have your own table in my place." For a while, I did. I helped with invoices, answered phones, even baked pies when the kitchen was short-staffed. The first year, he called me every day. Then came Lauren Sharp suits, big dreams, soft smiles that turned cold when no one watched. One afternoon, she said, "It might be better if you stopped dropping by. Customers keep asking who you are. They think you're staff." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. I stepped back, slowly, like someone fading from a photograph. Birthdays became texts, holidays, polite dinners. My name disappeared from the restaurant's website. But I kept the paperwork, the contracts, the transfers, the proof of what I built, a habit from the years when trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. That night, I placed those folders on the kitchen table. They looked like nothing, but I knew better. A week before that dinner, my phone rang while I was watering the porch plants. It was Matthew. His voice sounded careful, like someone testing the depth of cold water. "Mom, Lauren thought we should all have dinner next Friday," he said. "Just family. No fuss." I wiped my hands on a towel. That sounds nice. I told him, "Is it for something special?" He hesitated. "Just celebrating family. You know, it's been a while." It had been nearly 4 months, 120 days since he last called, long enough to forget the warmth in his voice. Still, I wanted to believe him. I spent the next few days pressing my dress, polishing Paul's old watch, and framing a photo of him from our wedding day, the one Matthew used to keep on his desk when he was a boy. When I arrived at the restaurant, the hostess asked if I was meeting the Harwoods. I nodded, my stomach warm with hope, but as she led me to the table, I saw the plates already served, the wine already poured, and Lauren laughing at something her father had said. Matthew spotted me first. His smile flickered. "Mom, you made it." "I did," I said, setting the framed photo beside my purse. "I brought something for you." Lauren's eyes darted to the picture, then to the waiter. "We ordered a few minutes ago," she said lightly. "I hope that's all right." I glanced at the table, 5 plates, each with a steak, perfectly rare, all except the space waiting at the end of the table, where my place had once been reserved in name alone. The laughter around the table was soft, curated, expensive, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, but settles somewhere cold in the chest. I watched the waiter pour wine into crystal glasses, while my grandson, Oliver, tapped his fork against his napkin, pretending not to notice there was no plate in front of me. Lauren leaned close to her father, whispering something that made him smile. Matthew checked his phone. No one asked if I wanted to order. I reached for the bread basket and placed a slice on Oliver's side plate. "You can have that," I said quietly. He shook his head. "It's yours." "Grandma," the waiter appeared beside me, polite and patient. "Ma'am, would you like to order anything?" Lauren spoke before I could. "She's fine," she said, smiling at him. "Mom's just keeping us company." Matthew nodded without looking at me. "Yeah, she's fine." Something in me steadied then, like a door closing softly. I set my napkin on the table, straightened my shoulders, and said, "Actually, I'm not fine." The waiter froze. Matthew looked up. Lauren's smile faltered. "Cancel any pending orders," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle, "and put everything already served on my son's account." He forgot who paid for his first one. For a long moment, no one moved. Lauren's cheeks went pale. Matthew blinked, as if trying to process words he'd never heard from me before. "Mom," he started, his tone half warning. I turned to the waiter. "Thank you. That'll be all." He nodded quickly and stepped away. The table stayed silent, except for the faint clink of silverware from nearby diners who were pretending not to stare. Lauren whispered, "Elaine, there's no need to make a scene." I smiled. "Oh, this isn't a scene, it's just clarity." Then I reached for my purse, lifted the framed photo of Paul from beside it, fingers brushing the glass, and stood slowly, letting the movement draw the room's attention. Oliver's eyes followed me as I walked past the bar and out into the cool Charleston air. For the first time that evening, I felt full of something that wasn't food at all. The knock came just after 9 the next morning, sharp, fast, impatient. I opened the door to see Matthew standing there, his jaw tight, Lauren behind him clutching a folder. "We need to talk," he said. I stepped aside, then talk. They walked in like they still owned the room. Lauren set the folder on the table and slid a sheet of paper toward me. "This is the restaurant bill from last night," she said. $1,200. "You made quite a scene." So you can cover your share. I looked at the paper, then at her. I see. Matthew crossed his arms. You embarrassed us in front of clients. Lauren's parents were humiliated. What were you thinking? I took a slow breath, went to the cabinet, and pulled out a thick brown envelope. I was thinking about this, I said, laying it on the table. Lauren frowned. What is that receipts? Contracts? Bank transfers? Proof of who actually financed your restaurant, every cent of the $200,000 I gave you 8 years ago. Matthew's eyes widened. Mom, I cut him off. You forgot, I said softly. I didn't. Lauren gave a thin laugh, the kind that trembles around the edges. You wouldn't dare make this public. It would ruin the family's name. I met her gaze. Try me. The silence that followed was long and clean. Even the air felt different. Matthew finally spoke. You're serious? I am, I said, and unless you plan to apologize, you can take that bill back to whoever ordered the wine. I only paid for the table once. Matthew, that was enough. He swallowed hard. You can't just, I can, I said, because it's still half mine. You never changed the registration. I let you believe you had. I wanted to see how far greed would take you. Lauren's face flushed. You're bluffing. I opened the folder and slid a notarized copy of the ownership agreement toward her. Then you should have read the fine print. They stared at the paper like it might burn through the wood. Lauren's voice broke. You'll regret this. No, I said quietly. You will. They left without another word, the door closing hard behind them. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to me again. By Monday morning, I was sitting across from my attorney, a woman named Karen Field's sharp voice, steady eyes, and the kind of quiet that could cut through noise. I still have all the documents. I told her. Every transfer. Every signature. I never removed my name from the partnership registry. Karen nodded. Then you still own 40% of the restaurant. If they've been using that business for personal expenses, we can freeze operations for review. Her tone was calm, factual, almost merciful. I signed the papers without hesitation. 2 days later, word spread faster than I expected. Someone from the Charleston Business Board called about financial inconsistencies. Lauren had filed years of reports that didn't add up. Food vendors hadn't been paid in full, and one of the staff members, a quiet accountant named Marcy, forwarded proof of double invoices. That night, my phone rang. Matthew's name flashed on the screen. I answered. Mom, his voice cracked. What did you do? I protected what's mine, I said. They froze our account. I can't pay the staff. I can't buy supplies. Then it's good you still have those $100 steaks, I replied. He went silent. I could hear his breathing, heavy and uneven. You could end this, he said finally. One call, just one. You always taught me to be fair. I looked at the framed photo of Paul on my mantel. Fairness isn't free. Matthew, it costs exactly what you took from it. There was a pause, and then the sound of something breaking glass. Maybe before the call ended, the next afternoon, Karen called. The review's official. Investigators confirmed false entries in the books. We'll need to meet next week to discuss next steps. I thanked her, hung up, and stood by the window. The rain outside had turned the street into mirrors, gray and still. Later that evening, I heard a car door slam. Matthew was standing at the bottom of my porch steps, soaked, eyes red. Please, he said. It's gone too far. Lauren's losing her mind. She says you're trying to destroy us. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. You built this yourself, son. I only stopped pretending not to see it. She's my wife, he said. You can't humiliate her like this. I studied his face. The same face I once wiped tears from when he was 5 years old and scraped his knee. Humiliation, I said softly, isn't when people see the truth. It's when they already know it. He looked down, shoulders shaking, then turned and walked back through the rain. I stood there a long while, hand on the doorframe, listening to the storm fade. Before I went inside, I whispered to the empty air. Actions have a way of balancing themselves. Son, you taught me that. 3 days passed before I saw him again. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the knock, gentle this time. Not the kind that demanded, but the kind that hoped. When I opened the door, Matthew stood there alone. His clothes were wrinkled, his face hollow from sleepless nights. "Mom," he said, his voice small. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. They closed the restaurant. He whispered, "Lauren's gone to stay with her parents. We're being audited. I don't even know where to start fixing this." I poured him coffee and slid the cup toward him. "You start," I said. "By telling the truth." He rubbed his forehead. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted to make something big, something that would make you proud. But Lauren kept saying we needed more investors, more image, more everything. I let her handle the books because I didn't want to fight. You didn't want to lead," I said quietly. He flinched. "I thought if I kept the peace, it would all work out. It went far because you stood still," I told him. He looked up, then his eyes red, the same pale green as his father's. "I was afraid of losing her," he said, "and I ended up losing everything else instead." I nodded slowly. "Fear is cheaper than pride, Matthew. But it costs the same in the end." He laughed once, brokenly. "You sound like Dad." I almost smiled. Maybe he finally got tired of watching us repeat his lessons. Matthew reached for my hand. "Mom, I don't know how to make it right. You can't fix what's already broken," I said, "but you can stop breaking what's left." For a long time, we sat without speaking. The house creaked softly around us, the way it used to when he was a boy sneaking out of bed. When he finally stood, he looked older than I'd ever seen him. "I'll do better," he said. "If there's still a way to earn back your trust." I watched him walk to the door. His shoulders heavy, his steps slow. He didn't look back. And this time, I didn't either. I was trimming the rose bushes when a car screeched into my driveway. Lauren stepped out, heels striking the pavement like gunshots. Her hair was unbrushed. Her eyes rimmed red. "You ruined us," she shouted. Voice shaking with rage, I set down the clippers. "Good morning to you too." She marched closer. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The restaurant's gone. The investors pulled out, and your precious son can't even look people in the eye. We're finished." I wiped my hands on a cloth, keeping my tone even. "No, Lauren, I didn't ruin you. I just stopped feeding your arrogance." She blinked, stunned by the calm in my voice. "You think you're righteous. You embarrassed this family. Everyone knows what you did." "Everyone," I echoed. "Funny. No one seemed to notice when I paid your debts. When I worked in that kitchen without a paycheck, or when you told me to stop showing up because I didn't fit the image." Her lip trembled. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You built your life on borrowed pride and called it success. Now the loan came due." Lauren's anger cracked into tears. She covered her face with both hands, the sound of her sobs breaking the morning quiet. "I loved him," she whispered. "I just wanted us to look successful." I sighed. "Then maybe this is what honesty looks like." She turned away, shoulders shaking, and stumbled back toward her car. When the door slammed, the echo lingered longer than her engine's roar. The roses swayed gently in the wind. I bent down, picked up a fallen petal, and brushed it from my hand. Some things, once pruned, never grow back the same. 3 weeks passed before I heard from him again. No calls, no visits, Just a plain white envelope in the mailbox with my name written in Matthew's careful handwriting. Inside was a short letter and a check. Mom, I know I can't undo what happened. I was blind and proud and let the wrong voice guide me. You were right about everything. The restaurant, Lauren, me. If you can forgive me, use this to replace what I took. If not, I understand. Love. Matthew. I ran my thumb over the ink. The familiar tilt of his letters. The tiny smudge where he must have hesitated. The check was for $50,000, probably all he had left. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The same table where I'd once helped him balance his first ledger. His small hands trying to write neatly like mine. Then I whispered, "You don't owe me anything." I tore the check neatly in half, the paper sighing between my fingers. The letter I folded carefully and slid into the frame of an old photograph Paul and me on our wedding day, both of us smiling like we could hold the whole world together with love and work. The sunlight caught the edge of the frame, and for a moment, their faces seemed to glow. I left it there. Standing beside the coffee mug that still smelled faintly of morning, the evenings in Charleston have a stillness I used to mistake for loneliness. Now, it feels like peace. I sat on the porch that night, the same one Paul built years ago, watching the porch light glow against the soft dusk. He'd wired it himself, said it should always face the road so no one coming home would ever have to walk in darkness. The boards creaked, and Oliver stepped outside, barefoot, holding a glass of lemonade. "Grandma," he said, settling beside me, "Mom says you always leave that light on, even when you go to bed." I nodded. "Your grandpa put it there for me once, but now it's for someone else." He tilted his head. "Who for the woman they tried to starve?" I said quietly. He frowned, thinking, "You..." I smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe it's for anyone who's ever been told they don't deserve a seat at the table. Sometimes a light's enough to remind them they still do." Oliver looked toward the water. The reflection shimmered like gold stretched thin across the river. He reached over and held my hand. "Will you ever turn it off?" he asked. "Not tonight," I said. The air was warm and still, somewhere in the distance. The city lights blinked to life, one by one, joining mine. The porch light burned softly on, steady and forgiving its glow, no longer waiting, just remembering.